I think things could have been handled better, and so these are certainly learning experiences for us as we move forward. I think we need to build a stronger relationship working with the leaders team in Caucus.
Those were, frankly, some of the kinder words that Charlie Angus had for NDP leader Jagmeet Singh this week. A hope for more FaceTime, maybe a better relationship. Singh drove a bit of a wedge between himself and his caucus by punishing veteran MP David Christopherson for voting with the Conservatives on a controversial summer jobs motion in the House. Singh took Christopherson off a parliamentary committee, then changed his mind and put him back on it. But how much damage has already been done? No better group to ask that question than At Issue. Marie Vestel is in Ottawa with me tonight. So is Paul Wells. And Chantal Hébert is, of course, in Montreal. Good to see everybody. Okay, this was a strange one because I wasn't expecting discipline to happen so quickly. And I think the way that Jagmeet Singh handled it was a little questionable. Chantal, what should we take from this?
That becoming federal leader is a steep learning curve, that becoming a federal politician is a steep learning curve, that the combination of the two of them for a seatless leader is turning out to be quite a challenge. This is not the first time that Jagmeet Singh is forced by Caucus to correct his course. It's the third that we know about. Bilingualism for Supreme Court justices, remember, he mused about maybe in the case of Indigenous Canadians, we could drop that. It's been a long-standing cause of the NDP that Supreme Court justices should be able to hear arguments in both languages. Then last week, correcting the course on attending events where there are Sikh activists promoting violence to achieve their means. And then this, which I think was the more serious one because it went straight to caucus unity and the blood was spilled in public.
And did he have a choice, Paul? Was there any other option here than to put Mr. Christopherson back into his place?
I'm given to understand that the plan was always to put Mr. Christopherson back after a while. This was essentially a stint in the penalty box. It was substantially foreshortened after Charlie Angus criticized the leader publicly. It's interesting, there's kind of a pendulum that swings in party leadership from one style of leadership to another, from the sometimes lackadaisical Jean Chrétien to the hyperactive Paul Martin many years ago. Remember that Jagmeet Singh is the leader because the party was sick of Tom Mulcair, who was a master of parliamentary procedure, but seemed sometimes to be too much a creature of the House of Commons and unable to reach outside it. Now they've got a leader who sometimes seems unable to reach inside it and connect to the caucus, and he's paying the price for that.
And I wonder how much is due to that, Marie, the fact that he doesn't have a seat, he isn't around a whole lot. I don't see him around a whole lot. No. How much does that have to do with his connections with caucus and sort of getting a read of the room?
Well, I think it has a whole lot to do with it. I think the Christopherson issue translated both of the problems that Chantal alluded to. First off, that he doesn't necessarily know the nuance of federal policy, because in this case, David Christopherson didn't vote with the Conservatives on this motion because he suddenly was not pro-choice anymore. He said he remained pro-choice, which is the NDP's policy, but he felt that the Liberals' change to the attestation for summer jobs grants applications was too restrictive. It didn't let people have the freedom to disagree with the law, even if they agreed to respect it, just to personally disagree with it. And so I think it showed that he didn't grasp the nuance of this thing that has been discussed in the House of Commons for months now. But it also translated the other problem with him not being in Ottawa more than what I think is a few hours a week, because he didn't feel, first off, that David Christopherson felt this very deeply enough to vote against his party, but also that from what we've heard, he wasn't the only one. There were other MPs who had the same malaise with voting against the Conservative motion for the same reasons that David Christopherson did.
You seem to suggest, though, in a column this week, Paul, that this is not, fatal, that no one needs to panic yet.
Well, I actually I suggested the NDP had better not panic, in the sense that they're stuck with this leader until the next election, or trying to replace him would cause its own set of problems. If getting rid of Tom Mulcair was a mistake, and different people can reach different conclusions, I think it was a huge mistake. Getting rid of Jagmeet Singh as leader would compound the error and give the impression that the NDP has no idea what it wants to do. This party has to learn to work together. Clearly, the leader has to get to know the caucus. There should be some sort of formal committee system which includes veteran members of caucus working with the leader on the daily and weekly agendas. But also the caucus is going to have to learn to get to know the leader. I think an off-site retreat like you do in a troubled workplace would not be a bad idea. Like trust exercises, falling into each other's arms and stuff like
something.
that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, but sometimes I don't disagree with any of that, although I think it's a bit charitable on Paul's part. There are times when provincial politicians do not actually manage to make that transition. I'll name two of them, Stockwell Day and Martine Ouellet. And what they have in common with Mr. Singh is that they were sitting members of provincial assemblies, that they were elected with the help of a push for a very different message, and then they could not make it work with Caucus, and they disappeared.
And
I want to
put warning to Jagmeet Singh that you shouldn't probably ignore the tensions with your caucus too long, because she lost 7 of her 10 MPs.
Yeah, although she's still there for whatever reason. Okay, I want to get to the actual issue that this was about because, and this speaks a little bit to what Chantal wrote this week, we're just stealing ideas from you guys, around the Liberals' attempt to influence social policy, maybe create social wedges. Here's a little bit of what the Prime Minister said about the summer job grants program.
We will stand up for women's rights. We will defend women's rights and the rights of the LGBT community, regardless of what folks in certain religious groups try to push us against.
I don't have a ton of time here, but Chantal, is this an attempt, between this and some other things, to, I don't know, smoke out some of the parts of the Conservative Party? Is it a wedge? Are they scaring off people that like Liberals but have positions on these issues? What's going on here? Or
keep people who used to vote for the NDP and went and voted for Justin Trudeau on side. I don't know if that was the plan, but it has not worked well. There are too many people like Christopherson, to name him, who are pro-choice and pro-LGBT rights, but feel this was heavy-handed. I covered the abortion debate in the House of Commons. Part of the entire debate was about no government imposing its conviction on abortion on women. It didn't say imposing the conviction that people like or don't like. It was get out of women's business with deciding what they do about carrying a pregnancy to term.
Marie, you also found that there's a link here between a few things that the Liberals have tried over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it's been a tendency of this government to maybe push their ideological beliefs, which are very strong convictions of Mr. Trudeau, but I don't think it's necessarily the best strategy to push them down people's throats. The Conservatives were criticized for being too ideological. It's not necessarily better to be too ideological just because you're on the other side of the social spectrum. I think there is a risk here. There are polls already showing that men who supported the Liberals in 2015, of that number, a third have now changed their minds. I don't think this is completely not related to what we are discussing. And I think David Christopherson is a prime example of someone who agrees with these positions but doesn't think that they should be pushed so harshly. And even a Liberal like Scott Sims, who also voted with the Conservatives on this motion on the summer jobs grant attestation, it's a Liberal MP. And he is having a hard time with it. I think that probably gives you an idea that there are probably Liberal voters who are also starting to find this a little bit much, that Justin Trudeau perhaps shouldn't behave like he's, Justin Trudeau, the school teacher, telling people how they should think or what they should or should not think.
But if you take that, Paul, with guns would be another example, the racism hearings that they're doing that could be a can of worms they may regret opening up. Is there something going on here strategically that we should try and understand? Or is it just, as Marie says, they're trying to drive their ideological positions?
I think these guys are increasingly in love with their own view of the world, and they need to understand that even some Canadians who share their opinions on these divisive issues don't like it when their neighbors are told how to behave by the government. That was what brought down Stephen Harper in 2015. A lot of Canadians were uncomfortable with veiled voting. They were not sure what to think of Syrian refugees, but they did not like the spectacle of a government that was capitalizing on it. And the other thing is, Justin Trudeau needs to know that when he plays both ends of the field, we see him. There is not a Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist holy day on the calendar that is not welcomed with effusive praise from the Prime Minister of Canada. And he always forgets to say, in a little asterisk at the bottom, unless you hold anti-choice views, or, you know, so when he goes seeking the approval of every religious group in the country, and then goes to a fundraiser in Montreal and tells people he's going to stand up to those same religious groups, we see him.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you all for this week. Appreciate it. Good news for all of you who love politics as much as all of them and me. At Issue is also a podcast. You get extra content and what we just talked about here, the main panel, podcast form every week. This week on the podcast, we check in on how the Liberals are doing on their commitment to curb climate change. Look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/thenational.